Today, we're going to dive into a completely different way of thinking about justice, one that comes from the rich traditions of Polynesia. We're going to look at a system where the main goal isn't to punish someone, but to heal an entire community. So let's just start with this one big question. For so many of us, justice feels like a contest, right? A battle in a courtroom with a winner and a loser. But what if that wasn't the point at all? What if it wasn't about proving you're right, but about making things right for everyone involved? And that idea is really at the heart of our first section here. The fundamental difference we're talking about is the goal itself. It's a huge shift in perspective, moving away from a focus on just one person's rights to a much bigger picture, the health and harmony of the whole community. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On the one hand, you've got the Western approach. It's all about individual rights, fair procedures, getting that legally binding piece of paper. But on the other hand, the Polynesian focus is totally different. It's about the group, about family ties, and most importantly, about restoring the balance of the whole social order when something's gone wrong. So to really get this, you have to understand the concept of va. You can think of it as the sacred space between people. It's the relationship, the connection itself. And when there's a conflict, it's this va that gets broken. So the goal isn't really to punish the person who did wrong. It's to carefully and sometimes painstakingly repair that connection and make the community whole again. Now, to understand how this all works, we've got to go a little deeper into the spiritual foundations of this worldview. And these aren't just, abstract philosophical ideas. They're seen as very real forces that shape everyday life. First up is mana. This is such a core concept across the Pacific. It's a kind of spiritual power or authority that a person or even a whole family line can have. It's more than just influence. It's seen as a real, almost tangible energy that helps a person be effective and command respect. And tied directly to mana is tapu, which you might recognize because it's where we get the word taboo. It means something is sacred or forbidden. So if a person or a place has a lot of mana, it's considered taboo. It basically creates a spiritual do not cross line, and it's a super powerful way of keeping social order. So who's in charge of all this? That would be the ariki, or the eki, the chief. This leader, usually hereditary, is seen as the living anchor for all this spiritual power. They're the one who really establishes and enforces the rules of tapu, acting as a channel for these forces to keep society structured. Now check this out, because this is where it gets really fascinating. These spiritual ideas were believed to have actual physical effects. For example, take this old Tongan belief. If you broke a tapu, say by eating a forbidden food, that wrongdoing was thought to literally enter your body. It would then cause your liver and belly to actually swell up as physical proof of your social crime. And the only cure wasn't medicine. It was a social cure, a specific ritual performed by the person you wronged. It just shows how deeply a social problem was connected to physical health. Okay, so we've got these big spiritual ideas about harmony and order. But what did that look like on the ground? In the day-to-day. How was justice actually carried out? Well, here are some really amazing examples. In Samoa, you have the Fale Fono, the chief's meeting house where issues are still debated today. In Tuvalu, there's the Fale Kapule, an assembly of elders that manages community business. And in Old Hawaii, there was the Puhonua, a literal place of refuge. If you broke a serious kapu, a sacred law, you could run there and be safe and find absolution. Each one is a unique institution designed to keep the community in balance. Of course, none of this is just ancient history. Today, these ancient customs are living and breathing right alongside modern legal systems, many of which came in during the colonial era. And that creates a really complex and pretty dynamic legal landscape. So, what you have today in many Polynesian nations is this kind of two-track system. You've got the formal state law with its courts and police running at the same time as customary law. People often find themselves moving between both systems to solve a problem, seeing them as different but equally legitimate ways to find justice. And, when you have two systems like this running side by side, you're going to get a mix of things. You get some beautiful integration, like in Tuvalu, where an actual act of parliament in 1997 legally recognized the power of the traditional assembly of elders. But you also get friction, right? Because the community-first focus of custom can sometimes clash with the guarantees of individual rights you find in a constitution. It's a constant balancing act. So, what's the big takeaway here? What can we learn from this way of looking at justice, this relational view, especially for those of us who might work in fields like mediation or law?
This table just breaks it all down so well. I mean, look at the core values: community, harmony versus individual freedom. Or think about the role of the person helping solve the problem. In the Polynesian model, it's an authoritative chief who is absolutely not neutral. Their job is to restore order. In the Western model, it's an impartial mediator who just helps the conversation along. And the outcome says it all: restoring social harmony versus getting a legal agreement. They're just fundamentally different worlds.
So, if you're a mediator working with people from this cultural background, you have to shift your thinking. You've got to acknowledge the collective. It's never just two people in a room, it's families, it's communities. You have to reframe the whole goal as restoring harmony. And maybe most importantly, you have to be flexible. Make room for elders to speak and understand that a ritual, like a formal apology or exchanging a gift, might be the real resolution. Way more important than any signed contract. And maybe that's the most powerful lesson here. The goal isn't always to win, to prove you were right and they were wrong. Sometimes the real work, the important work, is just to restore that precious space between us. So we'll leave you with that question to think about. In our own world, which can feel so divided sometimes, what can we learn from a justice system that for centuries has been built not on winning an argument, but on restoring harmony?